Good morning. This is a little bit unusual for us because we're usually scheduled for Wednesdays at 1:30, but today we're scheduled for today, Tuesday, which is a little bit early for us at 9:30 a.m., really early for us. And this is a regular meeting of the Public Safety, Civil Rights, and Emergency Management Committee. Today is Tuesday, August 23rd, 2016. It is a little bit after 9:30, and we have this meeting. My name is Belong Yang. I'm the chair of this committee, and with me today are Council President Johnson, Council members Quincy and Gordon, and we are a quorum of this committee, and we can do the committee's business. Today we don't have Council members Reich and Palmisano, and I believe they're both on vacation. So let's get to it. Most of this agenda is just consent items, except for one discussion item, and so I will go over them really quickly. The first item is a contract with the University of Minnesota Veterinary Clinic for veterinary services. The second item is a MOU with the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C. for police officer participation in the Presidential Inauguration Task Force. Third item is travel expense donation acceptance from Major Cities Chiefs Association. Fourth item is a custom door gift acceptance from Aaron Carlson Corporation, and this is for an awesome custom ballistic wood door. The fifth item is a security film and labor gift acceptance from the C-Bond and Sun Control of Minnesota. Sixth item is a grant acceptance from the state of Minnesota. Fourth Judicial District Court for Police Liaison and Monitoring Services. The seventh item is a grant acceptance from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, Office of Traffic Safety to support traffic enforcement. And the eighth item is a grant acceptance from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, Homeland Security, and Emergency Management Division for the Emergency Management Preparedness Grant. And council members, anyone want to pull anything off the discussion agenda? All right, not seeing any. All those in favor, or I will move that we approve all of those consent items. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, the ninth item is a police department response times directive, and this is to receive the MPD staffing and response times reports for priority 1, 2, and 3 calls. And with us today are Robin McPherson and Assistant Chief Arneson. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of this committee, thank you for letting me present in front of you. I'm here today to talk about the response time report, which came out several weeks ago, but due to some unforeseen delays, we were unable to brief you on it. As you can see from the report, well, actually, I'll just start. We are concentrating on keeping our priority 1 calls down. We hope to have a better response in the future with new officers in precincts now. The priority 1, 2s, and 3s are up, so we have had some challenges there. Priority 1s are only up slightly by a few seconds overall, citywide. I think that with our increased staffing that came out on the streets mid-June, that we'll have a better, hopefully, response time in our next quarter. And if I could, before questions start, if you do have any, I just want to go over our current sworn staffing numbers. Right now, we have 829 officers. We have 26 cadets that are graduating on November 1st. You're all invited to that. We have 20 recruits that will graduate in December. You will get notices on that also. And so projected year-end sworn full-time employees will be somewhere between 866 and 871. Some of the things that have impacted staffing so far this year or going forward, and there's a list of them, our crisis intervention training, where we are training all patrol staff in that. Very helpful. We have active shooter training coming up for the Super Bowl in October and November. We are completing our body camera trainings. We've already done the 1st precinct, the 4th precinct, and the 3rd precinct. Now we have left. Next is the 5th precinct, and after that, the 2nd precinct. So 2 months from now, every patrol officer will have a body camera. Shotgun and defensive tactics training is ongoing now, including some de-escalation training. The national initiative, we've completed 1 and 2 and are going into module 3. That should be done by January, where everyone in the whole police department will be trained. New mandatory drivers training, that's been mandated by the state. And then RMS implementation, planning and timeline, and upcoming training for that with the new RMS system. So that all does impact training because it takes officers off the street. But I think that going forward, we're going to, with the addition of new officers, there'll be almost 60 new field training officers on the street in December. They will be done a few months after that by next spring. So again, next spring, we'll have that infusion of brand new, newly trained, ready to go officers.
Councilmember Quincy?
I think that may have actually, thank you, Mr. Chair, just may have clarified the question. I was going to ask on the staffing levels by precinct. That's current levels. It doesn't reflect the new cadet class or recruits, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And then I'm also was just going to skip back a little bit to the response times. This was through the first quarter I'm looking at. Is that right? The response times on
Councilmember
slide.
Quincy, that would be the 2nd quarter,
Okay.
April, May, June.
I'm looking at the first little slide. I thought this was. That's the one I was thinking of. And that's through the 2nd quarter. Okay. It's different than my printed version here, but I think that the information is basically the same, is that we're up slightly in priority 2 and priority 3 calls and response time. That's one thing to look at just times, and then we've looked at staffing levels, which are a function of that time. The other important number is the number of calls. Are we up in number of calls versus, is that why we're being later in arrival, as we've got more calls? Because we certainly have more police officers, so.
Councilmember Quincy, actually the calls are down. And next to each precinct, you'll see on the right-hand side that it gives the numbers. So potentially, the new officers were not assigned to the precincts until June. So we did have, through almost to the end of this quarter, that staffing wasn't as high. Secondly, in May, we started to send response cars to the 4th precinct to help them out. And so we had to backfill in the precincts. So potentially, some of those shifts were not fully filled.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, they were, but that's another potential issue on maybe some of these response times are a little bit higher than we'd like. Also, as you've heard Chief Harteau talk about up here, we want to give people good service.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're spending more time on some of these lower priority calls so that they have good service, so they're getting proper response, and we walk away and they feel like they got a good response from the Minneapolis Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
More officers are on the beat,
right?
So they're getting out of their cars. So on these priority 2s and 3s, if they're assigned a call, they have to get back to their car. All those potentially are factors.
Right. I was particularly pleased you brought up the factor, because we're spending more time with residents on a call. We'll have a chain effect on when you can get to the next call. And if you're distracted and have to go to another call, a higher priority call, that's going to affect response time as well to the 2 and 3s especially. So anyway, thanks for that clarification. I was unclear that actually the calls were down, which is interesting and something we should be happy about as well.
Thank you.
Council members, any other questions? All right. AC Arnson, are you done with your presentation?
I am, sir. Thank you
Okay.
very much for letting me come and talk to you.
Councilmember Gordon has a question.
Well, it was just a comment. I think for the second time in a row, we've seen the response times for priority one calls in the 4th precinct go down, which at least, so let's go to that one, which I think is a good sign because I noticed last report that happened as well. I think we had one quarter where it was 12 minutes or something like that, and then there was a dramatic decrease. And I don't have last reports to compare this to quarter one. So we may have gone up a little from quarter one, but anyway, we've gone down from last year, and I think that's great. And also the number of calls seem to have gone down pretty significantly in the 4th precinct too, which is usually good, but you want people to call 911 and to feel good about calling 911, and they should call often. And so hopefully they aren't deciding not to call for other reasons.
Yeah, Councilmember Gordon, thank you. If I could just respond to that also, just briefly. It is a priority in the 4th precinct, as in all precincts. I think the difference here could be that we staffed up the 4th precinct significantly. Now, although it was not until the middle of June for the permanent officers, we had officers' response cars from other precincts going every day. And we still have increased staffing up there. So I believe that makes a difference. The more staffing you have in a precinct, the shorter your response time hopefully will be on some of these calls.
I did look it up. Excuse me. I did find it online, and I think the response time for priority one last quarter was 9 minutes and 32 seconds. So it's even gone down a little from
Awesome.
quarter one.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Council President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Chief, I want to thank you and Bartol for the extra help that the 4th Precinct has received this quarter, or this year, excuse me. But I want to assure everyone that we have not seen a decrease in the violence that is going on in these neighborhoods. Crime Stoppers just did an increase in the reward for Ms. Beeks, who was a grandmother that was killed on 21st and Penn. This week we've had a grandfather shot in his house watching TV. His house was shot through. His car was shot through. He's just sitting there watching TV. 2 gangs are fighting with each other across the street. He was an innocent victim. We've had a gentleman this month at a bus shelter on 38th and Dowling, shot through the nose, waiting for the bus. Good work from our department and the Highway Patrol. Got 3 arrests in that incident. Great work. We also had great work on a 13-year-old child who was shot in the leg, caught in the crossfire again of 2 gangs shooting at each other by her house. Arrest on that one also, and it was related to the homicide that happened at 35th and Penn. So one of the things that's clear when you have this much gunfire going on, when the police respond to this, the 4th Precinct officers, you see 5, 6, 7 squad cars because people have to do all the evidence collecting of all the shots that are fired. Obviously, talk to the neighborhood residents who have had this happen in their neighborhood, and it just takes a huge amount of police resources. And so, when you see that people have to wait 45 minutes for priority 3, which is probably like a burglary that's already happened or something where people are gone or whatever, you understand why that is. But I just really want to emphasize that we have not seen a decline at all in some of this insane shooting that people are doing at each other in our neighborhoods. And it's really frustrating. People look at the addresses of the people that are arrested. They're not even from the neighborhood. They're from Brooklyn Park. They're from, one was from Columbia Heights. I mean, it's St. Paul. People are coming here and on the north side to do their dirty work. And it's just, it's really, I know people are transient. They probably have some connection in some way. Otherwise, they wouldn't be shooting at somebody. But it's just really frustrating, and it's terrifying for neighbors. It's unacceptable. So, but thanks to the precinct and all of the people that have helped us this year since we've had this uptick, because we sure needed it. Thank you.
Thank you, President Johnson.
And Chief, could I piggyback on that? And then I have a separate question, but Council President Johnson talked about all these different incidents that have happened on the north side. And, I think I wanted to highlight one part of it, which is we have been making arrests, though. And that's really critical. I mean, people need to hear that as well, that, our police officers have done, fantastic work in terms of making arrests. And, hopefully, we'll get some convictions out of those arrests as well. But to a different question, just within the last month, there was some, I'd say, controversy over folks making 911 phone calls and, needing to identify themselves. And, can you clarify just that for folks? And, can you also answer the question of whether that has had an impact on, any of these response times or anything like that?
I will answer the second question first. So thank you for asking the question, Mr. Chair. I think the second question that I'll answer first was I don't think it has an impact on response times. Now, we were doubling up on many of our squads, so 2 officers in a car, but we are back to normal operations on that front. Secondly, yes, we were asking, and we weren't the only police department in the nation that was asking this because of incidents that were going on nationally. We decided that we wanted to make sure that our officers were safe when they came to went on those calls, and that citizens were safe also. So trying to get more information on who was calling in. There were a few calls that we did not dispatch to, but they were not priority calls. So I hope that answers your question. People always can say they want to remain anonymous, which means that the officers will not walk to their door and knock on it, thus letting the whole neighborhood know that they were the callers. But we do want their name in the call so that we have someone to call back or someone to contact in case there is an arrest made, because we want to tell people when we've been able to make an arrest or something has happened. So, or follow up in the investigation also.
Thank you. Council President Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to blindside you, but I read the paper before I came in, and we had an editorial about the warehouse district and concerns that are going on there. And I see that, our precinct 1 has been the second highest staffing in the city. What are your thoughts, and what's being done to address the concerns that the Warehouse District Business Association visited with the editorial board about? Now, it's nothing that any of us haven't heard, but I just want to make sure that we are clear that we're responding to the concerns that people have downtown.
Yes, President Johnson, thank you for that question. So having been a first precinct inspector, I know the issues very well down there. One of the things that we have done very well is partner with the Downtown Improvement District and the Downtown Council. We are listening. We are doing our best. One of the things that we do is focus on hotspots. Well, that's 5th and Hennepin, and 4th and 1st Avenue, just kitty corner from each other. So there's that one block there that the precinct is actually in. And that's a block that gets a lot of attention from us. We have cameras, we have officers there. As you know, from a shooting that happened last spring, where we on 5th and Hennepin on the light rail transit platform, we had 18 officers there, and the shooting still happened. So we are doing our best to make sure that we are making arrests, that we have a great presence. We have juvenile outreach workers downtown who are police officers and civilians. We are partnering with a whole host of agencies that help us interact with folks and keep that crime down. In June, we staffed up the precinct along with the 4th precinct. That was the 2 priorities for the chief, is to staff up the 1st precinct and the 4th precinct. For the 8 officers coming out in November, I have the south side to take care of now a little bit. But remember, all those FTOs or field training office, new officers are coming out in training, so that's another 60 that will be, we'll be infusing downtown and other precincts with those. So we acknowledge, yes, it is an issue. We need good, strong partnerships, which we have. The report is out, and I think that, we'll be working with the council members also downtown and working on some solutions.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, this is just receiving and filing action, and so I will move to receive and file the police department response times directive report. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And with that, we are done with our business, so we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.